What's up guys, it's Sosa MMA here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be breaking down all of the main card fights on the UFC Vegas 90 Allen versus Curtis 2 card here. Why are there so many fights on this main card, by the way? There's 6 of them. And I'm going to move myself off of the screen here so you can see. I'll explain why this dude looks so weird in a second, okay? Once we get to his fight. He's the second one in, so you won't have to wait that long. So if you don't know who that is, you'll figure it out. But I'll be covering up some of the presentation because I keep forgetting to format them around my face being on here. But I should fit on there pretty well, so I'm sorry about that, guys. But make sure you like the video if you like it. You don't have to like it right now, though, because you probably don't know if you like it or not yet. So I understand that. And without any further ado, we're just going to get into it here. So the first fight on this card is Trevor Peek versus Charlie Campbell. That's this guy's name, right? Yeah, I believe so. And Campbell is cleaner on the feet for sure. He's got really slick, nice striking. And if this was just a competition of that, then I would pick Campbell. But there's a couple of problems. And number one is that Peek got that dog in. And we've seen Peek get hurt, but we haven't seen him get finished in the UFC or anything like that. And Campbell definitely has the power to hit him and finish him. And he is very hittable. Like, extremely hittable. If you guys haven't seen Trevor Peek fight yet, you're missing out. He's the king of swang and bang. That's all he does, is just go relentlessly on the feet for the finish. You got to watch some of this guy's fights where he wins. The ones where he loses aren't that entertaining. He usually just kind of gets his ass beat, and he like overcommits on his strikes a lot, so he'll get like taken down and smothered too. We'll talk about that when we break down one of the fights later on down the main card. But yeah, he's super hittable. So could I see Campbell finishing him? 100%. I actually don't feel super confident on any of the picks on this card. And I think a lot of it comes down to that in a lot of these matchups, I feel like the worst fighter is going to win. And I do feel like Trevor Peek is the worst fighter. I do feel like he'll win. And a big part of that comes down to the defensive issues that Campbell has. So I saw it when I was watching back his fight with, who was it that he was fighting? I'll have to look at it real quick. I don't remember who this guy that he was fighting was. It was one of the tape reviews I was just doing, so you'd think that I would know, but let's see. It was when he was fighting Alex Reyes. Yes, so he would hurt Reyes and get him backed up to the cage and start teeing off on him. But he does that thing, and it's really common. I do it too when I train, and I've been working on it. But Ilya Topuria is a common example of it. Alex Pereira does it as well. It's what got him KO'd against Izzy. But it'll have you against the cage, right? And a lot of the time, when you strike, it's okay to bring your fist back to your chest because you're not at a range where you're going to get countered super bad for that. If your footwork and judging of the positioning is good. But if you're in the pocket with someone and you're just throwing these strikes out and you're never bringing them back here to your chin, you're always bringing them back to your chest to prime up the next strike, which Topuria has a defensive vulnerability there. Like I said, Pereira at times exposes that defensive vulnerability, which is something I do think Jamal Hill will exploit, which is why I've picked Jamal Hill in that fight. And it's something that Campbell does too. And it's not just a hypothetical that could get you into problems, because he dropped this guy Chris Duncan badly on Dana White Contender Series, really had this guy hurt and started walking him down. And before he even could process what he was going to throw to start finishing this guy, he got caught with a 1-2 on the chin and brutally finished right afterwards. So it went from a fight that he was winning dramatically to a fight that he had lost all within the course of 1:43. And really the tide had changed over the course of just like 3 or 4, because he's not defensively responsible when he has someone hurt. And that could be a real problem here. So in terms of betting on this fight, I don't really have a parlay for you guys because I don't feel fucking confident about like any of these fights. So the idea of parlaying them terrifies me, to be honest with you. I would much rather bet singles on this. And on this one, I would rather take a good line on the under, but you're not going to get a good line on the under. So your best hope is of it going to decision, but I really don't see that happening. I really do see this getting finished. And what I honestly see happening, I'm not going to do like a full breakdown for any of the fights except for the main event, but I really see Campbell hurting Peak and wobbling him badly, and then it being shown off that this is the case, and Peak can get hurt badly and still continue to fight because this is the dog that he has in him, whereas this is the dog that Campbell's got in him, and it's just not enough of a dog to contend. So I think he's going to hurt Peak. He's going to trudge forward and get the finish. And even though he got finished walking forward like that, he still hasn't fixed the problem, which is understandable because it's not an easy one to fix. It's a really super understandable thing that once you've got that guy finished, you're going to be less responsible defensively than you normally would be. But it's a thing that can get you finished against a guy like Trevor Peek. And by the way, guys, the low poly UFC pictures are going to stay. They're fucking hilarious. I love them. I kind of hate that Campbell's is so nice. I like how Trevor Peek's looks. It's badass. Okay. So I'm predicting Trevor Peek by KO. If you can get a good line on it, I do believe Peek is an underdog right now. Would not advise against that necessarily, but it is super possible Peak loses this. So if you can get Campbell within the distance, probably by KO as well, that would be a good bet as well. Now, on this next one, I'm not actually going to be doing a breakdown because that Lucas Brzezinski guy, he got brought into the UFC on a no contest. He was winning before that, but then he's riding 3 losses. One of them is by knockout. I think he's been knocked out like 4 times in his career. He's here to be knocked out by Valter Ignacio. And as shitty as it sounds, I hope that does happen. I don't know why we're at the point where we have guys who are literally just brought in the UFC off losses or no contests in Dana White Contender Series to be fed to prospects in their debut. I guess we're just boxing now. But I'm cool with it. Let's just get a bunch of fat fucking slobs for Robelis Despain to beat the shit out of over and over again. That's fine with me. But I'm just going to, instead of breaking down this fight, because it would be a joke, if Brzezinski does win, huge fraud check on Valter Ignacio here. But I'm just going to break down some of Valter Ignacio's game from the tape review I did of him. And in case you can't see the resemblance, this is actually Johnny Walker's brother. So sometimes you'll see him referred to as Valter Walker as well. I believe that's what the UFC is referring to him. But sometimes you'll hear him referred to as Valter Ignacio. Just depends. So just some of the things. He's got some really nice low kicks. When he's fighting patiently on the feet, which he does most of the time, he's working behind those low kicks. And they're pretty heavy as well. So those are nice in his game, and he likes to mix in his grappling as well. He's got really nice ground and pound. He's got really heavy top game too. He's pretty patient on the ground as well, but he can get some pretty good passes into mount done as well for his weight. He's a heavyweight fighter as well. And once he's in mount, he delivers some pretty brutal ground and pound. But a lot of his work as well is in the clinch too. So what he really likes to do is cover distance with either feinting front kicks or his feinting his knees, and then going in forward with blitzing with his boxing combinations, like his 1-2 and his step in knees, and getting you up to the cage so that he can clinch, and throwing knees and elbows in the clinch, which he's really successful with as well, and he's really imposing in the clinch too. And he also eats a lot of big strikes without showing much reaction too. So compared to his brother, he has a pretty good chin, to be honest with you, as well. And he actually is also kind of similar to more recent Johnny Walker, quite patient on the feet as well. He also has really good counter timing. So in some of his fights, you can see him catching guys as they come in with these big winging shots, and he just finds a really quick straight punch that finds the timing. And obviously timing is a relationship that you and your opponent have, whether or not you can disrupt theirs and find your own on them. is something independent to each opponent. So you can have really good timing in one matchup, and then something a guy does can really throw off your timing in the next one. But he seemed to, across the fights that I was watching, have a pretty good read on his opponent's timing most of the time. It'd be really interesting to see how that translates to obviously higher quality competition in the UFC. But since he's a heavyweight, we don't really have that because they're all fat and fucking suck ass. But he can thump as well, so that's pretty badass. He should get the job done here. I hope it's in the first round and that it's really, really badass to watch. That would be cool, I think. Now, this fight, I don't have a strong read on Christos Giagos versus Ignacio Bahomondes, guys. I think Giagos has a route to win this fight on his grappling for sure, and on the feet for that record. I don't think he's screwed on the feet by any means, but I think that if he wins this, he needs to mix in his grappling for sure. And I also think that Bahamondes can spark him out. But I think that one thing that's really going for Giagos' favor is that he has fought way better competition. I could try and recall them all off the top of my head, but he actually has fought like a ton of really good people, so it's best for me to just pull it up and let you guys hear it. So, let's see here. Got to go back a while here, but one of his first fights in the UFC, actually his very first fight in the UFC, his debut, he got armbarred by Gilbert Burns, so that's kind of tough to debut, but you're fighting Gilbert Burns in your debut, so that's just rough to start. He's fought Josh Emmett, and he did get knocked out by him, and that wasn't actually in the UFC either, but he did fight Josh Emmett. And then he also fought Charles Oliveira. He's fought Drakkar Klose, which he isn't the caliber fighter of the ones I've been mentioning, but Drakkar Klose is a solid fighter as well. He's fought Arman Sarukian. He's fought Thiago Moises. He's fought Daniel Zellhuber. And the thing is that, all of those guys that I've talked about that he's fought that have been super good beat him, and most of them finished him. But they're all better than Ignacio Bahamondes. And I'm not saying that to just shit on Bahamondes or anything. It's just true. And they're also all better than anybody that Bahamondes has fought. So he is coming off of a loss to Ludovic Klein. And before that, he was riding a 3-fight win streak over Trey Ogden, Zhu Rong, and Roosevelt Roberts. The Roosevelt Roberts win is pretty nice. Also, that was his spinning wheel kick KO, so that's really nice. And before that, he had taken a loss to John McDessie as well. So when it comes down to this matchup, it's really tough to say, because the only people that Christos Giagos recently has beaten are terrible. Ricky Glenn in his last 4 is the only win, and that dude sucks, bro. Some of you guys could go life and death with Ricky Glenn. Dead ass. I'm being serious. But as well, Bahamondes is younger and fresher for sure. He's 7 years younger, and he's been through a lot less fights. And I don't see Giagos pushing the pace on the feet to beat Bahamondes. He's shown that he was capable of pace when he fought, I want to say it was Drakkar Klose. He had a pretty high octane fight with, but Bahamondes had a way more high octane fight against, who was it that he lost to? Was it McDessie? I think it was, who really made him work, and that's why he ultimately lost that one. I actually feel like this fight really could go the distance. That might just be a pick that ends up aging like fucking milk for me, because there's high potential for a finish here. But I really feel like this one could end up going to decision if it doesn't end within the first round and a half. But I am going to pick Christos Giagos to win by decision. Like I said, not a super solid read here. But this is who I would pick if you had a gun to my head and you were going to shoot me if I didn't pick someone. So, please don't do that, though, because I don't feel confident in that pick. So, it would be kind of fucked up to make me do that over Christos Giagos. But, next we're going to talk about Morgan Charrier, whatever, man. The Frenchies are going to jump down my fucking throat no matter how I pronounce it. So, I'm just going to call him Morgan from now on. Sue me. and he's fighting Chepe Mariscal. And really, here, this is another instance where I feel like the better fighter will lose. But again, I don't have a super solid read on this because when Morgan Charrier hurts someone, he's not one of those guys who tends to let it like slip from them or show poor fight IQ. You know, like when Glover Teixeira pulled the guillotine after hurting Yuri, my lord. But, and this is a big but, I also want to highlight some of the things that Chepe has in this matchup. Because Morgan is a guy, he hasn't been knocked out before, but he has been submitted and he's lost a lot of decisions. I think like 8 decisions or something like that in his career. And Chepe has clean counter striking that he's demonstrated in his UFC fights. Namely, when I was watching tape back, he showed against Trevor Peek, and obviously Charrier a lot cleaner on the feet than Trevor Peek. But I do think that Chepe's counter striking will be on display here. That being said, Chepe is extremely finishable. Morgan, by round 1 finish, like knockout, if you could get something like that, that's very live, very active in this fight, and I wouldn't discourage it either. But I'm not going to bet on Morgan because I could see him getting clipped, and if he gets clipped, I don't think he gets knocked out. I really don't see that. I could see him getting subbed if he gets hurt and like knocked down, but I don't see him getting knocked down either. I would just see him getting hurt, and Chepe maybe being able to capitalize and get him swarmed to the cage and maybe take him down there. And I would like Morgan by KO on this if you can get a nice bet on it. But if I had to pick like how the fight's gonna go, I would go Chepe by decision. That's what I think is gonna happen in this fight. But I don't have the strongest read on this one either. Now for this one, I think it'll be really boring. I think I'm going to be in the bathroom during most of it, peeing, instead of watching this. And I think Damon Jackson is going to get a lot of takedowns, a lot of control time, and that's it. So, you guys might not want to tune into this one. But, if I'm wrong, I could be very wrong. So, I'm not betting on this fight either. Because it's all whether or not Hernandez's takedown defense is going to look good enough to handle Damon Jackson on the night. Whether or not reinvented, new hairline Damon Jackson is a mythical fighter or not. And he could be, but the answer is that I don't care enough to figure it out. And that's it. If you guys really wanted to hear analysis about this fight, I'm sure somebody else has done it, and I bet it's so riveting on their channel, and I'm sorry. I genuinely am if you came to me for the Damon Jackson, Alexander Hernandez analysis, but my analysis is I think he's going to get taken down a lot. I think Damon Jackson will win a decision, and I think that's it. Let's talk about this fight. So, I was initially going to call this video something like, no matter what I pick in the main event, it'll be wrong. And I do feel like that's the case. Because I feel like Chris Curtis should win. Because prior to that Nasruddin Imavov fight, his takedown defense looked so good in the UFC. And while Brendan Allen's not a slouch on the feet by any means, I do think Chris Curtis, especially when they met that first time, does have the tools to beat Brendan on the feet, obviously, and I think he maintains that to this day. But while I think he should stuff most of Brendan Allen's takedowns, I think that the momentum is something to seriously consider. Because it was basically like Brendan Allen was in the difficulty sliders on career mode, and he was on easy mode, and then he wanted to crank it up a little bit, so he put it up to hard mode, and then he hit Sean Strickland, got his ass beat. He was like, fuck, that's kind of hard. Then he went back down to easy mode. Oh shit. He went back down to easy mode, picked up a couple of wins, and then meant to click it up to medium mode again when he was fighting Roman Dolidze. Honestly, it's keeping it on easy mode because he fucking reeks. And then somehow accidentally clicked it up to legendary mode because Chris Curtis isn't better than Sean Strickland, but fighting Chris Curtis when you've had your momentum entirely halted by Sean Strickland, who Chris Curtis trains with, and then while you were training to fight a way shittier striker in Roman Dolidze, and while Chris Curtis is riding the best momentum of his career, just joined the UFC, is riding a knockout in Dana White Contender Series and then a knockout over somebody that a lot of people were hyping up at the time in Phil Hawes. It was a recipe for fucking disaster, bro. Like, I'm not joking. He cranked the difficulty slider up to legendary for that fight on accident, and he got clipped for it. And he was still doing good, man, is the thing, too. But Brendan Stonks are up right now, man. And their last fight was, like I was just talking about, short notice. He was supposed to fight Roman Dolidze, who fucking sucks. And would have been a lot easier of a fight that I think Brendan Allen would have won and would definitely win today as well. And now that there's tape as well on how to get Chris Curtis down, I think that Brendan Allen will be able to utilize some of the same techniques that Nasruddin Imavov was able to do. Hopefully fight less dirty than Nasruddin Imavov typically does. And he will end up getting Chris Curtis down at some point in this fight. I think that as well, he'll be competitive in the striking. I think that Chris Curtis is actually arguably worse on the feet. He's less aggressive and less assertive on the feet than before. And it just seems more, I don't know, it just like a flanderized version of his striking almost, and kind of more timid than the version of Chris Curtis that was surging and fought Brendan Allen the first time. So, like I said, this pick, as well as every other pick in this video, could age terribly because I feel like this card is really hard to predict. But I'm going to pick Brendan Allen to get the finish by submission. And I'm going to predict it to happen in round 3. But I want to know what your guys' picks are down below. Let me know if you guys disagree on any of the picks that I have in this video. Like I said at the beginning, if you liked this video, I'd really appreciate it if you guys like it. Subscribe for more as well. Thanks for blowing them up recently, and y'all have a great day. Thank you so much.